Hi, and welcome to the lecture on Understanding Signifiers. I'm your professor, Dr. English Dowdell. So let's start with a simple question. Um, how do you know when you're supposed to click on a screen? No instructions, no help menu, just the interface in front of you. Now, most of the time, you don't stop to think about that question because the answer feels obvious. You see a button, you see an icon, you see text that looks clickable, and you just act. But that's not magic. That's signifiers doing their job. Now, today, we're going to slow that process down, way down, and look at why interfaces communicate meaning and what happens when they don't. So, what is a signifier? So, a signifier is a visual cue that tells the user what actions are possible. Now, signifiers answer questions like, can I click this? Can I swipe this? Can I type here? Is this a button or is this just decoration? Signifiers don't explain everything. They just give users enough information to make reasonable decisions. Now, when signifiers are clear, interfaces feel intuitive. But when signifiers are weak, they're missing or they're misleading, users feel confused, frustrated, or even stuck. So, in human computer interaction, we assume one very important thing: users do not read instructions. They scan, they interpret, they guess based on experience. Signifiers are how designers communicate with users without words. Now, if a user clicks the wrong thing, it's usually not because the user is bad at technology, it's because the signifier failed. Now, to help us analyze interfaces more precisely, we categorize signifiers into three types: icons, symbols, and indexes. Now, you'll be identifying these in your assignment for this module. So let's walk through each one carefully. Okay, let's start with an icon. Now, an icon is a signifier that looks like the thing it represents. The connection is visual and direct. So examples include a trash can icon representing delete, a printer icon representing print, a magnifying glass representing search. Now, icons work because they rely on visual resemblance. Now, if you've never, say, used a system before, you can often still guess like what the icon does because it looks like the real world object. However, icons can still fail if they're too abstract, they are unfamiliar, or they're culturally specific. Not every user interprets images the same way. Now, a symbol represents meaning through convention, not through resemblance. You only understand symbols because you've learned them. So, examples of this would be like a heart representing like, or three vertical dots representing more information, or say a gear representing settings. Now, these symbols don't inherently explain themselves. You know what they mean because you've seen them repeatedly across apps and platforms. Symbols are powerful, but they're fragile. If a user hasn't learned the convention, then the symbol or the signifier fails. Now, an index is a signifier that points to meaning through evidence or cause and effect. Indexes don't show you what will happen, they hint that something can happen. So, examples of this would be text that has an underline or maybe blue indicating that it's a link. A cursor changing to a hand on, when it hovers. Maybe a field with a blinking cursor suggesting that you can type, or a button that appears raised or shaded. Indexes are often subtle, but incredibly important. They answer the question, is this interactive? Now, when indexes are missing, users hesitate. When they're clear, users feel confident. Now let's pause and put this all together. So icons look like the things that they represent. Symbols rely on learned meaning. And then indexes point to possible actions. Now, in real interfaces, you'll often see all three working together. Good design layers signifiers. Poor design assumes users will just know. Okay, so now let's talk about confusion because confusion is what we'll be analyzing in milestone 2. Now, signifier problems can be examples of that can be like, buttons that look like plain text, icons, with no labels on them, interactive elements that don't look like they're interactive, or visual clutter that hides important cues. Now, when users say, I didn't realize that was clickable, or they might say, I didn't know what that icon meant, or I wasn't sure, what to do next. What they're doing is they're describing signifier breakdowns. And this is where HCI analysis becomes really powerful. Now, as you complete this module, I want you to start thinking ahead, okay? For milestone 2, which is interface and HCI analysis, you're going to be analyzing a real communication platform, something like an email system or messaging app or collaboration tool, some kind of learning platform, or maybe some kind of social media interface. Now, as you explore your chosen platform, I want you to start asking yourself, what signifiers tell users what actions are possible? Where are icons used? Where are symbols used? Where are indexes used? Which signifiers are, clear immediately? And which ones require learning or guesswork? And then where might a new or unfamiliar user struggle? Now, you're not redesigning yet, you're just observing and interpreting. Now, for this module's assignment, you're going to practice identifying signifiers and categorizing them correctly. So as you do that, don't just label the signifier. Think about why it works or doesn't. And then consider what assumptions the designer is making about the user. Remember, good HCI analysis is not about personal preference. It's about understanding how meaning is communicated. Now, let me leave you with this thought. If a user has to stop and ask, what am I supposed to do here? The interface has already failed. Signifiers are how designers speak to users silently. Your job as an HCI analyst is to listen carefully to what the interface is saying and what it's not saying. Now, as you work through this module, I want you to slow down your interactions. Notice what guides you. Notice what confuses you. That awareness is exactly what Milestone 2 is designed to build.